Still stuck here, huh? I guess some people just never level up. That sentence had once been a joke between them, a teasing line Ethan would toss out when she hesitated over a risky idea or backed away from a bold move. But the day he said it again, it wasn't a joke, it was a knife, and this time, he said it in front of everyone. The office was already humming by the time Lila Morgan arrived that Monday morning. Phones were ringing non-stop. Printers chattered. Someone's laughter burst too loudly from the break room before fading into the usual low murmur of workplace noise. The marketing floor of Westbridge Dynamics always felt like this before a major project review, busy, tense, bracing for impact. Lila moved quietly through it all, a paper cup of black coffee warming her fingers as she walked to her desk. She set the cup down, tugged her chair in, and woke her monitor. The email she'd been avoiding all weekend sat at the top of her inbox. Subject: external strategy consultant joining Monday. She'd read it 3 times when it first arrived late Friday, then again on Saturday morning, and again just before she set her phone face down and tried to pretend the world outside her tiny apartment didn't exist. Now, she opened it one last time, as if the words might have changed. Please welcome Mr. Ethan Rowe, who will be consulting on the upcoming brand revitalization initiative. Her hand tightened around the mouse. The cursor blurred on the screen. Ethan Rowe. 3 years had passed since she'd seen that name anywhere but in the shadowed corners of her memory corners. She'd boarded up and painted over just to keep functioning. 3 years since the man who had once sworn he'd never let anyone hurt her had been the one to slice her life in two. She closed the email with a careful click, as if gentleness might somehow dull the sharpness of the truth. It didn't. His name was already ringing in her mind like a taunt she couldn't silence. Once, Lila had been the rising star of the entire company. She'd been brought on as a junior strategist. But in less than 2 years, she was leading major brand campaigns, presenting to executives, and mentoring new hires. Her concepts were bold but grounded in data, creative yet anchored in real consumer behavior. People listened when she spoke. Back then, Ethan had been the charming senior consultant from a prestigious agency, the one everyone wanted on their team. He was sharp, quick with ideas, unbothered by pressure. Clients liked him. Management trusted him. Co-workers orbited around him. Lila had been no exception. He noticed her early, praised her work in meetings, stayed late just to help with her decks, brought her coffee the way she liked it, no sugar, just a touch of oat milk. He listened when she talked about her parents, about her dreams, about the tiny apartment she was saving to upgrade. He seemed fascinated by her resilience, by her messy handwriting and meticulous mind. Or so he'd said. Within a year, they were engaged, and if that story had ended differently, perhaps his name in her inbox wouldn't have made her stomach knot with dread. But it hadn't ended well, because while she'd been building campaign frameworks late into the night, believing she was creating a life with him, he had been busy with someone else. Hannah, her best friend at the time, her teammate, her coffee break confidant, the woman who shared granola bars with her on tired afternoons, who sent her TED Talks to keep her motivated, who stayed late to make sure you eat, as she'd say. Hannah, who smiled with sympathy when Lila started getting fewer client invites, who rubbed her shoulder when stress made her tremble, who, as it later turned out, had quietly been speaking to their boss about Lila's emotional instability and unreliability with key accounts. The discovery had been messy, loud, and public. One overheard conversation, one misplaced phone, one text thread that didn't belong to her but carried her name in ways that made her feel sick. The fallout was worse. Rumors swirled. Hannah cried in the break room, saying Lila didn't understand boundaries. Ethan said they'd try to keep things professional, that they hadn't meant for anyone to get hurt. Management didn't bother to hide their size when her name came up. By the time the dust settled, Ethan and Hannah were quietly dating. Lila was out of a job. The HR report said performance concerns. The whispers said meltdown. No one asked her for her side. No one wanted to. She left with a cardboard box, a severance document, and a hollowness she wasn't sure she'd ever fill. 3 years later, she was still at Westbridge, but in a different capacity. She'd rebuild carefully, quietly, like someone stacking glassware after an earthquake, everything slow, deliberate, safe. She worked now as a mid-level brand architect, leading a modest team instead of high-profile accounts. Her campaigns were solid, effective, profitable, and deliberately unflashy. No more headlines. No more risks that left her standing alone if things went wrong. She had her own small office now, a plant that was somehow still alive, 2 framed photos on her desk, and a reputation for being steady and unshakably calm. It was a smaller life than the one she once imagined, but it was hers until that email. Lila, she blinked and turned. Mark, one of her junior analysts, hovered nearby with a notebook tucked against his chest. You okay? He asked. You look like you just read an audit. Just Monday, she said lightly. What's up? He brightened. Just checking. Do you want me to run those demographic splits before or after the meeting with the consultant? She swallowed. Before, please, she replied. Send me the top-line figures in the next hour. Got it. He scurried away, leaving Lila to her thoughts and her racing pulse. Maybe, she told herself, it wasn't the same Ethan. The world was full of Rose. The city was full of Ethans. The odds, but life never cared much for odds. By the time the department gathered in the glass-walled conference room that afternoon, her palms were slick with sweat, though her face was composed. The room glowed with that particular kind of corporate polish. Sleek gray chairs, long white table, bright overhead lights softened by engineered diffusers, the faint scent of coffee and new carpet. The wall-sized screen at the front cycled through the company logo. Her team filtered in with nervous chatter. You think this consultant is here to cut people? Someone whispered behind her. Heard he's a hatchet man. Someone else murmured. Jada, her closest colleague, slid into the seat beside her. You ready? She whispered, offering a faint smile. Lila nodded. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. My work is ready. That's what matters. Before Jada could answer, the glass door opened with a soft hiss, and there he was. Ethan walked in as if the room belonged to him. Time had touched him, but gently. His dark hair was trimmed shorter now, glinting with a few strands of silver along the temples. His jaw was sharper, the lines around his eyes a bit deeper. But that grin, that easy, arrogant curve hadn't aged a day. He scanned the room, and all the small sounds faded away. When his gaze landed on Lila, his eyes paused. For a heartbeat, something flickered across his face: surprise, amusement, calculation. Then, as if a switch flipped, he smiled. Good afternoon, everyone, he announced, voice smooth as ever. I'm Ethan Rowe. Some of you may remember me. He let that last line hang in the air, a baited hook. A few people chuckled politely. Lila sat perfectly still. He made a show of looking around again, one hand tucked casually into his pocket, his leather folio tucked under the other arm. Oh, he said suddenly, as if seeing her for the first time. His eyes gleamed. Lila Morgan, he drawled. Wow, you're still here. A dozen heads turned at once. Lila met his gaze, every muscle in her body tense. Yes, she said plainly. I am. He smiled in a way that was nothing like kind. I always thought you'd be, I don't know, running your own firm by now. Not everyone wants the same path, she replied. Of course, he said lightly, though his tone dripped with condescension. Some people like comfort. A few awkward laughs scurried across the room like insects. He turned away from her and clapped his hands once. All right, let's get started, he said. I'm here to help shake things up a bit, bring in some fresh energy, a little disruption. He smirked. Maybe help a few people evolve. It was almost impressive how efficiently he twisted the knife without ever raising his voice. The meeting moved forward in carefully orchestrated stages. First, Ethan spoke, confident, polished, full of buzzwords and case studies. Then came the team leads, each sharing their current campaign directions. When it was Lila's turn, she stood slowly, smoothing the front of her slate blue blouse, and walked to the end of the table. Her slides appeared on the screen, clean, minimalist, each number and phrase purposeful. Months of research and testing condensed into a concise proposal. She spoke clearly, focusing on the data, the narrative, the opportunity for the brand. She was halfway through her second slide when he cut in. "Hold on," Ethan said, raising a hand as if giving a benevolent reprieve. "This feels familiar." Lila paused. "Excuse me." He tilted his head, lips twitching. "This approach, it's very 2018. He chuckled softly. "Bit safe, isn't it?" She kept her voice even. "It's built on our most recent consumer insight reports and emerging market behavior." He nodded as if humoring a child. Sure. I see you looked at the numbers." He leaned his hip against the table, eyes on her, not the screen. "But when you've been in this game long enough, you learn that hiding behind proven models is just a way of avoiding real innovation." Laughter, this time less awkward, more genuine, rolled around the table. Lila felt her throat tighten. "It's not hiding," she replied. "It's harnessing what's already working while expanding into." "Relax," he interrupted with a lazy smile. "Don't get defensive. I'm just saying, if we want to move this company forward, we can't cling to old habits." His gaze lingered on her just a fraction too long. "Some people struggle with that." The subtext wasn't hard to catch. She inhaled slowly, pressing her nails into the palm of her hand under the table where no one could see. "My proposal is a foundation for the next phase of growth," she said. "Not the final product." He clicked his tongue softly. "If you say so." He laughed again, as if everything he said was harmless fun, as if her skin wasn't burning. Then he went further. "So," he added casually, "you're still in the same role, Lila? Haven't moved up?" She hesitated. "I'm where I need to be." "Interesting," he said with exaggerated surprise. "You always had big dreams, marriage, a house, your own team of prodigies following you around." His eyes swept the room. "Guesswork keeps you busy, huh?" A ripple of nervous laughter broke out. Heat flooded her chest. Her fingers shook around the remote. "That's enough," she murmured, barely audible. He cocked his head. "Sorry? Didn't catch that." She lifted her gaze, met his eyes squarely, and found her voice. "I said," she repeated, "that's enough, Ethan." The room fell abruptly silent. His smirk faded just a little. He shrugged, hands raised. "Hey, just a joke. You used to know how to laugh." Her manager cleared his throat. "Let's stay focused," he said. Miss Morgan, continue, but her composure had already begun to crack. Her vision blurred at the edges. The taste of humiliation familiar, metallic rose in her throat. She forced the rest of her presentation out in a tight monotone, barely hearing her own words. When she sat down, her hands were trembling so badly she had to lace them together under the table to keep anyone from noticing, or so she thought, because someone had noticed, but he hadn't arrived yet. The meeting dragged on, questions were asked, notes were taken. Ethan's easy laughter punctuated everything, the careless sound that once made her feel safe and now made her skin crawl. She stared at her notepad, pretending to write, trying not to crumble under the weight of everyone's sidelong glances. Then, faint but clear, came the sound that would shift everything, the soft chime of the private elevator doors opening down the hall. Conversations faltered, footsteps measured. Unhurried moved closer. The glass door of the conference room slid open, and the air changed. He stepped in like a shadow falling across the room, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that somehow looked more like armor than fabric. His dark hair was brushed neatly back from his forehead, his expression carved from something that did not easily bend. Calm, yes, but edged with an authority that made people stand straighter without realizing why. Logan Ward, founder of Ward Holdings, majority shareholder of Westbridge Dynamics. The man whose decisions could quietly change the direction of entire markets, and the man Lila had been married to, in secret, for nearly 2 years. Only a handful of people in the world knew that, until now. Am I interrupting? He asked mildly. And no one answered. No one seemed to remember how. The head of their division rose halfway out of his chair, flustered. Mr. Ward, this is an unexpected. Logan's gaze had already moved past him. He scanned the table. His eyes slid over Ethan, paused only for a fraction of a second, then continued to where Lila sat, hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. For one brief moment, his expression softened just around the eyes. Then, "It's steeled again, Mr. Rowe," he said evenly, turning his attention back toward the consultant. "I wasn't informed we'd added comedy to our agenda." Ethan blinked. "Sir, Logan didn't look at him. His eyes remained on Lila. "Mrs. Ward," he said quietly, the words deliberate, unmistakable. "You've done enough for today. Take a break." The room froze. "Mrs. Ward," someone's pen slipped from their fingers and clattered loudly on the table before rolling to the floor. Jada's head snapped toward Lila, eyes wide. The director's jaw actually dropped before he caught himself. Ethan stared between them, confusion spiraling into shock. "Mrs. Ward?" he repeated, forced laughter trailing his word. "You to know each other?" Logan stepped closer to the table, close enough that Lila could feel his presence now, that familiar steadiness radiating from him like warmth from a fire. He set his hand lightly but unmistakably on the back of her chair. "More than you understand," he replied, still calm, still controlled. Color drained slowly from Ethan's face. Logan looked at him, really looked this time, not as an executive evaluating a consultant, but as a threat being weighed. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Rowe?" he asked, his voice still soft, but edged now with something colder. Ethan swallowed. "No, sir, no problem at all." "Good," Logan said. "Then we won't need to revisit your behavior." Yet, he turned to the rest of the room. "Please continue," he said. "I'll be reviewing this department's recent work personally." Then, to Lila, his voice gentled by the smallest margin, "Come with me." She rose slowly, legs stiff, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Every eye followed them as they walked toward the door. She did not look at Ethan. She didn't need to. She could feel it the way his earlier confidence had curdled into something smaller, sharper, anxious. The glass door slid shut behind them with a soft hiss. On the other side, the room finally exhaled. Out in the quiet hallway, away from the buzzing air of the conference room, Lila stopped, folding her arms across her chest as if to hold herself together. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, her voice low, strained. Logan studied her face, that unreadable calm still there, though his eyes burned hotter than his tone. "He humiliated you," he replied. "In my building, in front of your team. I asked you," she said, "not to use your name to protect me." She took a breath. "Now everyone will think I'm here because of you." He shook his head once. "You're here because you belong here, because you earned it." "That's not what they'll say," she whispered. "They'll say I married the man who owns the company, that I didn't get this role, I was handed it. They'll say Her throat tightened around the words. "They'll say I slept my way into this job." He looked at her for a long moment, then spoke quietly. "They can say whatever they like," he replied, "but what they will not do is laugh at you while they say it." The fierceness in his voice made something in her chest loosen and clench at the same time. "You made it worse," she said, though her words lacked their earlier bite. "I wanted to handle this." "You were handling it," he said, "by shrinking, so he didn't see how much he was hurting you. That might feel like strength to you. It looks like bleeding to me." Anger and shame and fear tangled inside her. "I don't need you to fight my battles," she said. "I know you don't," he answered simply. "But that doesn't mean I'll stand in another room while someone tears you apart for sport." She dropped her gaze, blinking hard. "This is exactly what I didn't want," she whispered. "Rumors, side glances, Everyone's staring whenever I walk into a room. You survived worse, he said softly. I barely did. He exhaled and looked back toward the glass doors, his jaw tightening. Row won't be an issue for long, he said. She looked up sharply. What does that mean? Nothing illegal, he replied. Nothing messy. Just alignment. His lips curled faintly. People rarely enjoy the moment when their true reflection finds them. Logan, she said, suddenly afraid of that calm in his eyes. I'm serious. Don't do anything reckless. I don't want you to destroy him because of me. He met her gaze evenly. I don't destroy people, Lila, he said. I reveal them. They do the rest themselves. It didn't comfort her the way he thought it might. The penthouse at the top of Ward Tower usually felt like sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a living painting, streets glittering with headlights, buildings lit like constellations scattered across concrete. The interior was quiet gray stone and soft leather, the air faintly scented with cedar. Tonight, though, the silence felt too loud. Lila stood at the window, barefoot, arms wrapped around herself, looking out at the city without really seeing it. Behind her, ice clinked faintly as Logan set a glass down on the counter. He waited a moment, then walked toward her. You haven't said a word since we left, he said. She didn't turn around. I don't know what to say, she murmured. You turned my entire life upside down in 30 seconds. You think I did that, he said quietly. But that man started at the second he decided your pain would make good entertainment. She breathed out, a bitter, fragile sound. I spent 3 years rebuilding my name, she said. I took smaller roles. I avoided promotion offers that came with too much visibility. I did everything right, and in one moment, you made sure. Everyone will forget all of that and remember only this. She gestured vaguely between them, that I'm your wife. He moved to stand beside her, close but not touching. You are my wife, he said. That isn't a shameful thing. It becomes one when people think that's the only reason I'm still employed, she snapped. They'll say I failed on my own, so I latched onto you. He was quiet for a beat. Did you? He asked, her head whipped toward him. What? Did you fail on your own? He said. Did you latch onto me? You know I didn't, she said, stung. I do. He agreed. But their words only have power if you believe there's truth in them. He reached up and tucked a stray curl behind her ear with careful fingers. You've carried their lies long enough, he said. Drop them. It's not that simple, she whispered. It never is, he said. But it's still necessary. She looked away. I just wanted a quiet life, she said. A job, a paycheck, my own mind. No spectacle, no headlines, no pity. So did I, he answered softly. Until I saw you standing in that room, trying to make yourself smaller to survive one more joke. She swallowed hard. I can't go through it again, she said. The whispers, the stories, the way people choose what's convenient to believe instead of what's true. His voice was barely above a murmur now. This time, he said, they're not the only ones choosing. She didn't answer. In the stillness that followed, the ticking of the wall clock sounded louder than it ever had before. Later that night, she drifted into an uneasy half-sleep on the couch, the city lights flickering through her closed eyelids like broken memories. In her dreams, she was back in the old office, back in the hall that had once felt like a red carpet, and then, like a firing squad, she could hear them again. Hannah's soft, poisoned voice. She's been different lately. Emotional. I worry about her with these big clients, Ethan's practice concern. She just needs time. She's not handling pressure the way she used to. She remembered standing just out of sight, her breath caught like glass in her chest, her coffee turning cold in her hand. She'd walked out with a cardboard box and her dignity in tatters while they stayed behind untouched, unquestioned, apparently unshakable. That day, she'd promised herself one thing, never again. No one would ever again have that kind of power over her. No one. Except now, it felt like they did. A low, controlled voice pulled her from sleep. She blinked and realized she was hearing Logan through the crack of his study door. Yes, he was saying, I want everything you can find on Ethan Rowe and his firm. Public records, private deals, client complaints. Start with their last 12 months. A pause. No paper trail leading back to us, he continued. You know how I work, Mason. I'm not interested in fabrication. Just clarity. Another stretch of silence. I don't go after people, he said at last. I adjust the lighting. If they don't like what shows up in the mirror, that's not my fault. Lila stepped back just before the door opened. He emerged, phone in hand, expression calm but hard. Couldn't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. No, he studied her for a breath. Try, he said quietly. Tomorrow will be important. I don't want a war, she said. I just want my work to stand on its own. He nodded once, then let's make sure they see whose work it actually is, he replied. The tone in his voice told her this wasn't over. The storm was still building. By morning, the office felt different, quieter somehow. But in that silence there was a charge, a prickle on the skin, like the air before lightning strikes. People smiled too politely at her now. Their greetings carried an extra layer of something: curiosity, calculation, maybe a hint of fear. Mrs. Ward, one of the younger analysts, said shyly as she passed, then flushed. I mean Lila. Sorry. It's fine, she said gently. Just call me Lila. He nodded, eyes wide, and almost dropped his laptop. She made it to her office before the first email landed. From Hannah Cole. Subject: long time. Her finger hovered for a moment before she opened it. Hey stranger, I just heard the news about your big reveal yesterday. Wow, who knew you had such powerful connections? Must be nice having that kind of protection now. Anyway, I wanted to say congratulations. You always did land on your feet. We should catch up. No hard feelings on my end. Life is too short to hold grudges, right? Halila stared at the words, the false warmth dripping from them like syrup gone rancid. She didn't reply. An hour later, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost declined it, then answered. Hello? Lila. The voice was bright, familiar, and unwelcome. Oh my God, it is you. I was hoping you hadn't changed your number. Hannah, she said flatly. I saw a post about that consultant situation. Hannah continued breezily. Imagine my surprise when I realized it was Ethan. Small world, right? Silence must have been awkward. Hannah added with a soft little laugh. Lila's grip tightened on the phone. What do you want? She asked. Oh, don't be like that, Hannah replied. We were friends once. I thought maybe we could clear the air. Coffee sometime? There's nothing to clear, Lila said. You made your choices. I survived them. That's the end of it. Hannah's tone shifted, the sugary layer thinning. You always were dramatic, she said quietly. Listen, just a bit of friendly advice. Ethan's got some big plays lined up. You might not want to stand in his way again. You remember how that went last time? Something cold trickled down Lila's spine. What kind of plays? She asked, but the line had already gone dead. That night, she sat at the kitchen island with her laptop open, the blue-white glow of the screen washing over her tired face. She typed Ethan's name into search fields she knew how to navigate too well, cross-reference firm registrations with press releases, scan for familiar corporate names among his client list. It didn't take long before the picture began to sharpen. Rowe and Knox Strategies had recently bid on a major account with one of Ward Holdings' largest competitors, a contract whose success would rely heavily on insights into exactly the kind of brand revitalization plan she'd been building for Westbridge. Her brand revitalization plan. Her chest went tight. He hadn't come just to mock her. He'd come for her work, everything she'd presented, every model, every insight. She had handed him the map he needed to sell her ideas to someone else. The apartment door opened with a soft beep. Logan stepped inside, shrugging off his coat. His eyes fell immediately on her screen. You found it, he said. You already knew, she replied, voice barely above a whisper. He poured himself a small drink, the ice clicking faintly. I suspected, he said. Now we have confirmation. He's using my work, she said. Again, he came in, humiliated me, and stole from me in the same hour. He nodded once. He's done it before. He'll do it again. Unless someone stops him. She looked at his face, calm, composed, but with that quiet storm gathering behind his eyes. What are you planning? She asked. He took a slow sip before answering. People like Ro build their houses on other people's foundations, he said. So we show everyone where the cracks really are. She swallowed. What does that mean? It means, he said, we stop letting him write the story about you, and we let him finally read the story he's been writing about himself. The annual corporate showcase arrived like a tide everyone knew was coming. The company rented out the grand ballroom of a downtown hotel, a cavernous space draped in branded banners. Screens hung from trusses, rows of chairs lined up with military precision. Cameras were already in place to stream the event to investors and partner firms around the world. This was the day everyone polished their best smiles, the day slides mattered more than people, or so it had always been. Lila sat near the back, her badge clipped neatly to her blazer, her hands resting still in her lap. From here, the stage felt distant, like a story she wasn't part of. On that stage, Ethan moved with his usual confidence.
And as you can see, he was saying, pacing slowly before a projection of meticulously designed charts. By restructuring the customer journey and re-engaging dormant segments, we can expect a 25% increase in loyalty metrics within the first quarter. Polite applause rose like an obedient wave. The numbers on the screen were hers. The segmentation model, the projected uplift, even the phrasing of the strategy pillars, only slightly rearranged, dressed in his firm's logo. He was wearing her work like a tailor-made suit. Jada leaned over, voice barely a whisper. Didn't you present something like this to us weeks ago? Lila kept her eyes on her hands. Yes, she said. I did. On stage, Ethan flashed that same easy grin. At Rowe and Knox, we pride ourselves on integrity and innovation, he said, milking each word. We build honest partnerships grounded in transparency and mutual respect. The word integrity hit her like a slap. The word honesty made the room feel like it was tilting. She stared at her own reflection, faintly visible in the glossy back of the seat in front of her, a calm face, composed, but her hands had balled into fists without her noticing. The ballroom clapped again. This time, the sound cut off sharply. The heavy doors at the back of the hall opened. Conversations died mid-sentence. Executives shifted in their chairs. Logan entered without hurry, two members of corporate security keeping a respectful distance behind him. He didn't stride. He didn't need to. He just walked like a man who knew no one would, or could, stand in his way. He didn't look at the audience. He looked at the stage. Before we proceed, he said, his voice echoing cleanly through the hall without a microphone, there is something that needs to be addressed. The screen behind Ethan flickered. The consultant glanced up, confusion wrinkling his forehead. Sir, if we could just... Logan raised a hand. You've given us a compelling presentation, Mr. Rowe, he said. Sharp design. Strong data. Very persuasive. Some people shifted in their seats, sensing the but that hovered in the air. But, Logan continued, there's a fundamental issue. One we can't ignore. The screen snapped to a new image. It wasn't a chart. It was an email. From ethan.rowe@ronox.com to hannah.cole@meridianconsults.com. Subject, Morgan Files. Attachment, brand restructure _Morgan _V7.peeptx. A low murmur rippled across the hall. Lila's stomach twisted. She recognized the file name format. Her format. On stage, Ethan's smile faltered. This is taken from company servers, Logan went on evenly. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Rowe accessed materials created by one of our staff members without authorization. Every slide you've just seen originated in her work folder. Every projection. Every segmentation cluster. Every word of your innovation. He looked out at the sea of astonished faces. None of it, he said, belongs to you. Ethan swallowed. That's not what happened. The screen changed again. Security logs. Timestamps. IP addresses. A second email thread, this time with a subject line that made the air seem to thin. Data package sent. Transfer complete. From Hannah.Cole to Ethan.Rowe. Beyond stealing internal intellectual property, Logan continued, you and your partner, Ms. Cole. He let the name hang in the air, also transferred proprietary data to a direct competitor last month in exchange for payment. The ballroom erupted in outrage and disbelief. Executives leaned forward in their seats. Someone near the front swore under their breath. Phones appeared in hands as if by instinct, though no one dared start recording. You can't prove any of this, Ethan snapped, his earlier slickness giving way to real panic. Logan's gaze sharpened. The money trail says otherwise, he replied. Bank logs. Transaction IDs. Your firm's account. All shared with RL. He gestured slightly, and one of the security officers stepped forward, handing him a slim folder. Logan didn't open it. He didn't need to. Rowe and Knox Strategies, he said, built its credibility on a lie today. He glanced down, then back up again. Mr. Rowe, you spoke of honesty, loyalty, and integrity. His gaze slid to the audience briefly. Words tend to shrink when they're spoken by the wrong mouth. A faint, unwanted tremor of satisfaction washed through Lila. Not revenge. Recognition. For once, someone with power wasn't protecting him. For once, the truth wasn't something she had to whisper to herself just to stay sane. Logan continued. When you humiliate someone publicly, he said quietly, his voice carrying with frightening clarity, when you jeer at their work and treat their effort as your punchline, you might want to be certain of two things. He paused. One, he held up a finger, that they're not the mind behind the only thing keeping your presentation from collapsing. Two, a second finger joined the first, that you haven't chosen as your target the wife of the man you're stealing from. The last word hit harder than a shout. Wife. There it was, spoken in front of cameras and shareholders and leadership teams. Lila lifted her head. She met Ethan's eyes. The memory of his laughter in that glass conference room flashed, then burned out. She felt strangely light. Lila Morgan Ward, Logan said, turning to gesture toward where she sat in the back, is the strategist whose work you paraded as your own today. She built that model from the ground up. You mocked her. Then you plagiarized her. The room turned to look at her. This time, the weight of all those eyes didn't feel like condemnation. It felt like witness. A smattering of applause began somewhere near the middle row. It spread, gaining volume, building into something that sounded almost like a reckoning. Logan waited, not acknowledging the clapping. When it faded just enough, he spoke again. Mr. Rowe, he said, his tone now cool and unmistakably final, effective immediately, your contract with this company is terminated. Our legal team will be in contact regarding your misuse of confidential material and your unauthorized sharing of internal data. Security stepped closer to the stage. Ethan's voice broke. You can't do this. We had an agreement. I was invited. You were invited, Logan interrupted, to help this company grow. Not to cut pieces from it and sell them to the highest bidder. He nodded to the technician at the console. End the feed, he ordered. The screens went black. The live stream stopped with a soft electronic tone only the crew heard. The performance was over. The consequences were not. Within minutes, Ethan was escorted off stage and out of the main hall, his protests shrinking into the buzz of whispered conversations that swelled as soon as the doors closed behind him. No one laughed now. No one called after him with friendly jokes. He left the building smaller than he'd entered it. Lila sat very still, staring at the spot where he had stood. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just inhaled, slowly, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. In the days that followed, the company transformed into a hive shaken with a stick. Everyone had an opinion. He had it coming. I can't believe he was that reckless. Did you see her face when he was mocking her last week? Now it makes sense why Mr. Ward stepped in. Some people looked at Lila with new respect. Others looked away, ashamed of their earlier laughter. Jada approached her in the corridor outside the break room, eyes bright with emotion. I laughed at his joke, she blurted, before Lila could say anything. That day in the conference room, I thought it was just office banter. I didn't realize. You don't need to explain, Lila said quietly. I do, Jada insisted. Because you didn't deserve that. And I stood there and let it happen. Lila held her gaze for a moment, then shook her head. What matters, she said, is that it won't happen again. Not to me. Not, if I can help it, to anyone else here. Jada's throat bobbed. You're different, she said softly. Stronger. No, Lila replied. Just finished being quiet. That evening, the sky outside Logan's top-floor office softened into dusky lavender as the sun dipped behind the buildings. He stood at the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city breathe below. Behind him, the door clicked gently. You didn't have to go that far, Lila said. He turned to face her. Yes, he answered. I did. You humiliated him in front of everyone, she said. The same way he did to me. He started it, Logan replied. I finished it. I didn't ask you to. He considered this. No, he said. You didn't. You asked me not to say your name. I broke that promise. He paused. I'll live with that. But I won't live with watching you be treated like that again while I stand by with my mouth shut and my pockets full. Something in her expression softened, just barely. I thought I'd feel vindicated, she admitted, seeing him finally face what he's done. And, he asked. She sighed, the sound carrying exhaustion more than relief. I mostly just feel tired, she said. That's because you're better than him, Logan answered. Revenge doesn't sit well on people like you. It's too small. She moved to stand beside him at the window. Down below, taillights glowed red along the curves of the highway. I wanted peace, she said quietly. You have the beginning of it now, he replied. Truth spoken out loud is the first step. She looked sideways at him. And the second? He smiled faintly. Deciding what you're going to build from the ruins, he said. The ruins, as it turned out, held seeds she hadn't expected. A week after the showcase, a message landed in her inbox from a woman she'd never met. Subject: Thank you for what you didn't know you did. Lila opened it and read. You don't know me. I watched that showcase online. I've worked under men like Ethan for years. They take our work, our ideas, our hours, and then we watch them get the credit while they call us too sensitive if we complain. Seeing you sit there while he mocked you. I recognized that posture. I was there just last month. But seeing your boss call it out? Seeing your name put to your work? That was new. I thought no one powerful cared about women like us. I was wrong. I just handed in my resignation. I don't know what's next yet, but for the first time, I feel like I'm not crazy. I just wanted you to know that. Thank you. Simone. Lila read it twice. Then 3 more emails came, then 7, then more the week after. Women who had been humiliated in performance reviews. Women whose work had been quietly slipped into someone else's presentation. Women who had been told they were lucky to even be in the room. They all shared some version of the same sentence. I thought it was just me. Her old ache twisted into something else. Purpose. The Phoenix Initiative was born on a yellow legal pad at her kitchen table. She didn't call it that at first. She just wrote, a place for women to. And let the rest of the line sit for a moment. To be believed. To learn how to document. To negotiate. To leave if they must. To rise again. Phoenix, she murmured to herself, seeing it clearly now. Burned. Still here. New. By the time she went to bed that night, she'd mapped out the structure for a small mentorship network. Resources on workplace rights. A quiet referral list of employment attorneys. A space for anonymous stories. Monthly virtual meetups. She showed the plan to Logan 2 days later. He read every line without interrupting, his thumb resting just beneath her handwriting. When he finished, he looked up. You don't do things halfway, do you? He said. If I'm going to do this, she replied, I'm going to do it right. But I don't want it tied to your name. I don't want people to assume I only have it because I married you. So we fund it quietly, he said. Anonymous donors. No logos. No speeches. You stand in front of it by yourself. She searched his face. You're okay with that? She asked. He gave a slight wry smile. If it means other women don't go through what you did? Yes, he said. It's a relief, honestly, to put money behind something that actually matters instead of just looking good on paper. She exhaled, a small, genuine laugh escaping her. I thought you liked things that look good on paper, she teased. I married you, he answered. Paper never stood a chance. 3 weeks later, in a quiet corner cafe with warm wood and soft light, Lila sat with her laptop open, reviewing the flood of applications that had come in for the first Phoenix mentoring session. 20 women from 8 different cities. Some young, some older. Some still in their toxic workplaces. Some already out, trying to rebuild. Every story hurt. Every story felt familiar. She was halfway through reading a detailed account of a woman pushed out of a promotion for being difficult when the bell over the cafe door chimed. She barely glanced up. The man who walked in looked as though the world had been gnawing at him for a while. Thinner than before. Paler. The tie at his neck was loosened, his jacket more wrinkled than any she'd ever seen him wear. His hair, once carefully styled, was longer, untidy. There were dark crescents under his eyes. Ethan. For 1 second, their eyes met. Recognition crashed between them. He hesitated at the entrance. She considered looking away. Instead, she simply lowered her gaze back to her laptop. After a moment, she heard his shoes on the tiled floor. Lila, he said softly. She didn't stand. Ethan, she replied, tone neutral. He hovered, then asked, Can I sit? She gestured briefly to the chair across from her without enthusiasm. He sank into it, shoulders heavy. You look different, he offered. Happier. I am, she said. What do you want? He winced at her directness. I heard about your program. The Phoenix thing. He swallowed. It's good. What you're doing. Thank you, she said. Silence stretched. He stared at his own hands, twisting them together. I lost everything, he blurted. Clients. Reputation. Investors. They dropped us overnight after the showcase recording leaked. Even Hannah, his jaw tightened. She's testifying to save herself. Says it was all my idea. He gave a broken little laugh. She's not wrong, he said. But she wasn't exactly innocent either. Lila said nothing. I wake up at night, he continued, words spilling now. Hearing that crowd. Seeing you in that room. The way I laughed at you. I can't get it out of my head. He looked up at her, eyes raw. I told myself you'd moved on, he said. That what we did, what I did, wasn't that bad. That you were strong enough to handle it. Her gaze was steady. I was strong enough to survive it, she said. There's a difference. He nodded weakly. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I needed to say I'm sorry. Not the half-hearted kind I gave HR back then. The real kind. The kind that admits I was cruel because it made me feel powerful. That I enjoyed it. The honesty in that last line surprised her. She'd never once heard him say he enjoyed what he did to her. Justifications, yes. Excuses, plenty. But not that. You had a choice, she said quietly. Every single time. I know, he replied. And I chose wrong. Over and over. He stared at the table, his voice dropping. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, he whispered. And I broke you. She shook her head. No, she said. You broke the version of me that thought. She needed to go. He blinked, thrown. I don't hate you, Ethan, she said. I did. For a while. Then I realized I was still carrying you every day. In my shoulders. In my stomach. In the way I second-guessed myself. You were heavy. So I put you down. How? He asked, his voice almost desperate. How do you just stop carrying it? She looked at him for a long moment. Then she answered. I forgave you, she said simply. Not to let you off the hook. To let myself walk away from it. His brow furrowed. You forgive me? Yes, she said. But don't mistake that for reconciliation. Forgiveness isn't me giving you a clean slate. It's me deciding I don't want your name written on my story anymore. He swallowed hard, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. So that's it? He asked. This is the last time we speak? Yes, she answered gently. It is. He opened his mouth, closed it again. You're really done with me, he whispered. She offered him a faint, sad half-smile. "I was done a long time ago," she said. "You're just seeing it now." She closed her laptop, stood, and picked up her bag. "Take care of yourself, Ethan," she added. "You'll need to learn who you are without someone else to stand on." She walked away without looking back. Behind her, he remained at the table, hands pressed flat against the wood as if trying to study a world that would not stop spinning. Outside, the morning light was clear and warm. Cars moved past. People crossed the street with coffee in hand and earbuds in their ears, every one of them carrying their own private troubles. Leaning lightly against a dark sedan, suit jacket open, sleeves rolled up, Logan waited. When he saw her, he straightened, that rare, unguarded smile touching his mouth. "How did it go?" he asked. She drew in a breath, then let it out. "I forgave him," she said. His brow rose slightly. "You did?" "Yes." She smiled softly. "But not for him." He stepped forward, reaching for her hand. "That's why you scare men like him," he said. "They think the only way to win is to burn everything down. You just grow past it." She looked up at him. "Is that what this is?" she asked. "Outgrowing pain?" "That," he replied, "is called freedom." He opened the passenger door. "Ready, Mrs. Ward?" he asked. "More than ever," she said. As the car pulled away, the cafe receded in the rearview mirror, a small stage where a final scene had quietly played out. Inside, at a table by the window, Ethan sat alone, staring at the space she'd occupied moments before. He understood now, too late, that the worst consequence wasn't public humiliation or lost contracts. It was becoming a footnote in a story that no longer needed him. Back at her desk that afternoon, Lila opened the Phoenix Initiative inbox. A new message waited at the top. Subject: "I don't know how to start again." The body read: "I tried to stand up to my boss about him shouting at me in meetings. He told HR I was disruptive and negative for team morale. They let me go last month. I feel stupid for trying. I don't even know where to begin now. K." Lila rested her fingers on the keyboard for a moment. Then she typed, "You already began. You said this is wrong. You walked away, even when it cost you. That's not stupidity, that's courage. Starting again doesn't begin with a job offer. It begins with the moment you refuse to accept that your pain is the price of keeping your place. You're not alone anymore. We'll figure out the rest together. Lila." She hit send. Outside, the city hummed on. Inside, something settled quietly in her. She thought of that first meeting again. Of laughter echoing off glass. Of his voice, slick and cruel. "Still stuck here, huh? I guess some people just never level up." And then she thought of where she stood now. Building something that didn't just lift her, but others. Not stuck. Not quiet. Not small. Just standing where she'd always belonged. If there's one thing she knew now, it was this. You can drag someone's name through the mud for a while. You can dress up theft as talent and cruelty as humor. You can laugh loudly and make the whole room laugh with you. But life has a long memory. And eventually, the echo of that laughter comes back around. Not as a joke. As a bill. People think power shouts. Most of the time, it doesn't. Real power just walks into the room, turns on the light, and lets everyone see what was always there. You can humiliate someone publicly. You can strip them of their job, their reputation, their sense of safety. But karma? Karma doesn't need an audience. It works quietly, patiently, relentlessly. And sometimes, justice doesn't arrive with sirens or applause. Sometimes it arrives in a conference hall with a calm voice and a black screen. Sometimes it arrives in an email from someone you hurt years ago, reminding you their life is better without you. Sometimes it wears heels, walks out of a cafe, and never once looks back.